Good morning.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah, good morning. Good morning from Zurich, where
Absolutely.
where it's very cold and raining and I don't understand things. This is not Florida weather. Hi everyone, good morning. Hi everybody. Hi Alyssa. Hi Corey. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining our chat. So as I was just saying before you got on, I'm super excited to chat with you today because I feel like this whole like management thing is like some secret thing that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
And I get questions all the time from young artists about like, how do I get a manager? When is it time to get a manager? And for some reason, I feel like it's the one step that's like missed in education, either in school or in young artist program. And, I only know the way that I've just done it, where I just send a nice email with, my videos and my resume or bio or whatever the case may be. But I feel like, at the young artist stage of things, we should be really clear about how to get a manager, when to get a manager, how to build that team, and what that whole process should look like. So, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining. Hi, guys. So, shall we just start there and
Yeah.
just kind of like
Well,
pull the
just
curtain
and
back?
just to say, the reason that artist management is so mysterious is because we're a very important sector of the industry that is really kind of put together piece by piece. There's no, there are professional diploma programs for artistic administration, but not really for being an artist
Mhm.
manager. Everybody comes from a different background to artist management, and every artist manager does their job differently,
Mhm.
and has a different style, different practices. And so it is kind of an unusual section of the industry because it's all put together piece by piece. So it's not surprising to me that it's not taught, or that it can be hard to understand. And part of what I'm really committed to, along with some of my colleagues, is being much more transparent than we've been in the past about artist management, because it's a super important thing and people need to know about it and how it works.
Absolutely. And they need to know how it works at all levels. And I feel like, especially with my followers are very different levels of the business, from university level, to obviously professional singers who are out there singing and doing the thing. And then, of course, fans who have no idea what that actually is on that side because they don't get to see that side of the table or behind that side of the curtain. So, um, let's focus on the young artists for a minute so that we can sort of give those young artist followers that are on right now, and I see a lot of them joining in. Hi, guys. Let's give them an idea of number one, what does a singer need an artist manager for? I feel like this is a really important thing to know because I feel like a lot of singers feel like, oh, you guys book jobs, and that's actually not what the artist manager should be for. There should be a collaboration and a team and a you know a career that is built from the moment you start with that manager, through the progression of that career, through how the voice ages and matures and things like that. So tell us a little bit about how you go about managing a singer, and what does a singer actually need a manager for? Like, what does the manager do for us?
Yeah, so in bigger industries like Hollywood, people have an agent and a manager, and the agent kind of goes out, books the work, finds the opportunities. The manager, helps the client decide what they should be doing, strategy, vision, this sort of stuff. So in classical music, the manager plays both those roles.
Mhm.
So part of what we do is maintaining a network of presenters and opera houses and symphonies that we're trying to get our artists work with. And then the other part of what we're doing is all that other good stuff, the mentorship, the career shaping, the advice. The way that I view my role on the manager side is being part of the artist team. So I'm not by nature a trained musician. I really enjoy singing and I studied it a bit and I really enjoyed studying it, but I never was a performer, and I was certainly not any sort of technician, and so I would never put my foot forward with an artist in that way because that's not my background. And so I know my strengths and my what I bring to the table. And then I also want the artist to have other people, coaches, teachers, other mentors as part of their team, and we all work together collaboratively on behalf of the artist.
Wow.
In terms of what a manager does for you, they add value to whatever you're doing professionally. So sometimes that, I have worked with pre-professional people where there isn't going to be any immediate booking or contracts or commission payments, but I feel that that person's at a stage where they would really benefit from having a manager involved and that I can help them as we move towards a professional career. And then, of course, when someone is in the professional career, a manager plays all of these roles that we just talked about, helping to secure the work and then also advising on all the aspects around the work and the career.
Love that. I also love your idea of collaboration with an artist team. I am such a huge advocate of every young artist building their own team, and that team being the voice teacher, the coaches, the managers, the friends, the family, the husbands, the wives, the partners, the dogs, all the things. And that each part of the team is so important, but it's also important that the team, each member of the team is on the same page. And I love that you use the word collaboration because for me, it should be a huge collaboration for that artist. And, it's a hard job that we do. It's us kind of
Very
standing
hard.
it in front of in front of thousands of people and giving something from inside of us that we don't get the luxury of carrying around our instrument. We carry it inside of us, and so it becomes a very personal thing. And so that team also has to be very tight knit and personal to us. We have to have good relationships with everyone. And it's really nice when everyone on the team can have a great relationship. I love that.
Yep.
So the question that I get asked all the time, and the question that I have seen on other chats that I've done and master classes and things like that is, when is it time for an artist to seek out a manager? And the answer that I always hear is when you have something to manage.
Right.
And I know that that's a good answer, but I know a lot of people don't understand what that actually means. So to you, when is the time for an artist to seek out a manager? And what is sort of the process of doing that? How do the young artists go from square one and decide it's time to get management? This is the reason why, and here's how we go about doing it.
hmm So I think every manager will answer this question slightly differently because going back to what I said before, I am not opposed to jumping in with somebody who may still be in a pre-professional stage.
Mhm.
I think some managers probably do want to wait until someone is working professionally and they feel that's when they can be the most effective with them. But the answer when they have something to manage, I think that's generally kind of correct, but it can mean a lot of different things. So, again, if someone has a voice that everybody has an opinion on and that opinions are all over the place and the artist is super confused and they're having interest from, high level training programs, a manager can be effective being a voice on their team in helping to guide through some of that. And those are crucial kind of last stage steps before entering the professional career.
Mhm.
But yeah, in general, artists work well with managers if they're going to be competitive in the professional space. And this industry, like other industries, entertainment industries, there are so many people that want to do it, and it's hyper competitive. And so managers, I think, have a responsibility to make sure that we're working with artists that we feel actually have a chance at, professional traction.
Mhm.
Um, Success is a totally different word. Success is relative to every person. So
Mhm.
a big part of what I try to do is figure out what people's goals are and then work with them on their goals rather than saying, okay, I've signed you, so now here are the next steps for your career, and you don't
Mhm.
have any input in
Right.
it, right? Because, like you just said, this career is all encompassing. You go and spend weeks and months away from your home. Your instrument is in your body. I mean, it's just way too complicated to think that someone's going to tell you what you're going to do and how you're going to go about things without your strong input.
Mhm.
So that's a short answer. In terms of how you approach managers, I think the golden rule is always through a trusted third party that's known to both sides. So managers, we receive a lot of inquiries about representation, and always, the ones that either mention someone that we know and trust, or we hear directly from that person. That's always gonna be, make us feel a little more secure about, oh, this is somebody that I should look into and pay attention to. In terms of contacting managers, I think, keep it fairly compact. Make sure that all of the information a manager needs to learn about you is present, which means, your biographical information, your videos, your recordings, the schedule information, things like that. But just keep it friendly, keep it compact, reference those third parties, and I think that's a good way to start with a
I think
manager.
that's great. Do you recommend that the videos that the young singers will send to you, do you recommend that those are from actual performances with orchestras? Or do you like to see like the audition video with the piano and nice and clean, high quality audio, that kind of thing?
I mean, with orchestra videos are always fantastic. Auditioning is its own sort of thing, and it's very important. But auditioning doesn't always translate to what's going to happen in a performance. So whenever it's possible to have those videos with orchestra in performance, that's great. But what we're very used to is just kind of a standard piano setup, and
Right.
so that's wonderful too.
Just like a regular pre-screening audition video type of thing that they would send for Santa Fe or Des Moines or
Yep.
something like that. Okay, awesome. So then let's say you get a bunch of submissions and you decide you want to hear someone. And I always love when singers ask this question. They always ask, what's a management audition like? And the ones that I've been in, I mean, and this now I'm going to date myself. This was like 20 years ago. The ones that I've been in have been long, at least 30 minutes to an hour, a lot of different repertoire, a lot of exploration of repertoire. And I remember when I sang for my first managers, that they had said to me, okay, we want to hear this, this, and this. You decide what order you want to sing them in. We don't care. We just want to hear them all. So, however, that comes out easily for you, that's what we want to hear.
Yep.
And I remember it being like 30 to 40 minutes with some like talking in between, getting to know each other, those kinds of things. So, what is that audition like for you, and how do you explore, what a singer can do in that audition once you've decided you want to hear this person?
Yeah, I think what you described is very much what we do. I don't know that we would give all of the pieces right at the outset, but we would definitely, we almost, we let the artist start with what they want to start with, and then we'll say, okay, we'd like to hear these things, and you decide the order and what you want to do, and some chatter in between, and then always a sit down at the end where we kind of get into, if they are managed, we have a very confidential conversation about what's working, what's not, what they're looking for. If they're not managed, we try to get a sense of their personality, their goals, what their outlook is. But that's a super crucial part, as almost as important as the singing part, because again, this work is, there has to be so much trust in it, and there has to be, um, it's really, yeah, a wild career in a lot of ways, and so getting to know people and making sure it's going to be a good fit in that way is super important. So that is always definitely part of our audition process.
That's great. And that's really super. I mean, it's super important to remember too. You have to be able to work with this person on a professional level and a personal level. And, you have to be able, young singers, you have to be able to tell, your manager when, something is going on and maybe you're not at your best, or, we all know I went through this injury with my foot, and, you know, having someone to advocate for you, when you're going through something like that is really, really important. So you do have to be able to trust the person that's sitting across the table from you in that audition. So I can imagine that chat is actually really, really important for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Um, so let's say you decide to take the singer onto the roster. Um, how then, what is the process for you of submitting singers for jobs? Um, I know that, the young artists that are watching, they're doing their, Yap Tracker submissions at this point. And I know they're all going through PFO time right now, which they're all upset with. Sorry, guys. It happens. It has nothing to do with you. Don't worry. But in the management world, obviously submitting singers for jobs is very, very different. And so if you talk a little bit about, how that happens at the different levels, so that the young singers can know that they won't be in PFO land forever.
Yeah, the that process, every company does things differently. I mean, there are still a good chunk of companies that are very traditional where they send an email typically around this time and say, this is what we're planning for next season. We're holding auditions, typically in New York on these dates. Please suggest who you'd like. If we let us know if you think we need to hear them in audition or if we already know this person. And so we'll just make casting suggestions that way in a very straightforward way. Then, there are companies who don't do that. They don't really send out their planning, and they don't, necessarily hold auditions, but it's more that because we have a relationship with them, at some point we'll connect and they'll say, okay, here's what we're thinking about for next season. What are your ideas? And it'll be an ongoing process. And one thing I think is important to say is that very rarely is it that we make suggestions, and then it's just sort of like, okay, yep, that one, that one, that one, they're cast. It's normally like, a much longer, the artistic casting person is thinking about how they want to cast things. We're following up. Can we send more information? What's your feeling? It's a very involved process most of the time. In the symphonic world, it's much different because typically, if there's orchestral vocal rep, then the conductor is choosing the soloists, and so you put the singers forward, you send recordings, those are played for the conductor, and then you get an email saying, okay, we'd like to invite this person, or you don't get an email, and then that's your professional
You're
PFO, and
a
you're like, oh, okay.
professional PF. I love it.
Um, and then there's one more set, which is, kind of the bigger companies that plan further out into the future, multi-season planning. And so that is much more done, either with meetings or like very dedicated kind of um, discussions about whatever information those companies might be willing to share with you, because they're not always going to give all of that information to everyone. And so, and then that is also where we as managers are pitching individual artists to companies that plan farther out
Right.
so that they'll hopefully keep them in mind when they're looking at their planning.
And where do videos play a role in that? Because we all know that since COVID, the budget for travel for a lot of companies, especially regional companies in the United States, has gone down. And a lot of people are not going to, New York to sit at NOLA Studios to hear 5 days of auditions for 10 hours a day
Yeah.
anymore. So once you're managed, where do videos play a part in that? And what kind of videos do the companies like to see? Again, do they prefer to see something in a performance with an orchestra? Or are there still sort of like audition video type of things that get sent, when you're at the level of being submitted for like a general audition for, say, Nashville Opera
Mhm.
or New Orleans Opera or something like that?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's the same sort of thing. If there's something with orchestra that's in performance, that's extremely useful. But these companies are also used to seeing our arias at the piano,
Hmm.
we, really work to maintain as much media for our artists as we can. So whether we get that through archival recordings, if we're able to get our hands on that, or just a variety of different things, we always want to have as much video content as we can because that has become a really important part of casting for the reasons you said. So it's
Huge.
definitely something that we do a lot.
And do you find that companies will cast from those videos?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Guys, listen to Alex. The videos are so important. I mean, in Aria Bootcamp, you know that the final 3 days is all about your videos and all about your audition videos. And I can't even stress enough like how important it is to prepare those videos to the level of actual audition, because sometimes they are your actual audition.
Yep.
And it's just like since COVID, they've just become so much more important. So, everyone who's watching, keeping up with your media, keeping up with your YouTube channel, keeping up, even if you've got unlisted videos on your YouTube channel, who cares? Keep them there. Keep them there as like your archive that you can send out whenever, necessary. But keep up with that video. It's really, really important. Okay, so I'm going to take some questions. I have some questions from our submissions via DM. Um, and I would love anybody who's online right now, please feel free to throw some questions into the chat, and we will answer them for you. But I'm going to start with two that are very similar from our DMs. One, Christine Alfano and Madison Mutambal. Both of them wanted to know what factors go into deciding whether or not you invite someone onto the roster. And then at the same, what do you look for in a singer when signing singers to your roster? So I feel like those two questions are very, very similar.
Yep.
And there was kind of another, Christine said, besides vocal talent and work history, what else are deciding factors as to, someone you would want to bring onto your roster?
Yeah. So yeah, there's kind of two components to it for us. I mean, the biggest thing is individual aesthetic. So, having a sense of someone's personal artistry and how that differentiates them, especially if they're in a FOC that has a ton of singers in it. What is their Susanna like, and how is it different from all the other Susannas? That's a big thing for us. We are a roster that doesn't add people based on, oh, we need someone who sings these roles. Let's go out and find that person. We've never done that. And so what you'll see on our roster is like six Marcellos. And you're like, well, how can there be six Marcellos on a roster? That makes no sense. But they're all very individual artists. And so
Mhm.
okay, this is this kind, this is this kind, this is what this person does. And then the other caveats are, kind of the things that were mentioned. There needs to be, a distinct vocal timbre, the a feeling that the voice can fill, some of these crazy cavernous opera spaces that we've
Are-
built for some reason.
yeah. Uh-huh.
um, those kinds of standard things. And then, for us too, because we often take on singers who are mid-career and have been working with other managers, then part of the process for us can be, where is that person in their career, and do we think that we can help them achieve their goals any differently? But for singers who are unmanaged, it's really that individual artistry and feeling like there's something special and unique about what's being communicated, and that resonates with us as audience members because we're audience members too.
I love that. That's fantastic. I just wanted to sort of like piggyback on what you were saying about how maybe you have five Marcellos. Um, so many young singers have this idea in their head, and they tell me it all the time, and it drives me crazy. They have this idea in their head that they should not approach a manager when a manager has another singer that sings their same rep.
Right.
And it really blows my mind
Hmm.
because I once approached a manager because he had literally like the four or five women who sung all of my rep in Europe. And I was like, oh, I want to sing second cast to all those ladies. So I literally approached a manager once because I was like, you have all the girls who sing my rep. I want to work too.
Yep.
So what do you say to those young singers who have it in their head that they shouldn't be approaching a manager who has someone who does their same repertoire?
Yeah, so one of the first things that you should do as a singer considering a manager is look at the, roster, see where people are singing, and if there are people who are singing your repertoire, where are they singing your repertoire? And is that your level? Is that a different level? Um, I totally agree with you. I don't think that's in any way a disqualifier, and in fact, it can work very well in management, like you said. If there are artists who are very in demand, they may not be able to accept all the offers
Yeah.
they're receiving, and that information's coming into a management office and could perhaps be parlayed into a contract for somebody else. That's a win-win. So yeah, I don't think at all that artists should shy away for that reason. I do think that artists should look at the level that the artists are working at on the roster and say, do I think I fit in? Do I think that I would also be working at these places or competing for these
Mhm.
jobs? Because I think that, when you approach a manager and how you approach a manager is important to an extent. And so I think just kind of having awareness about, okay, do I feel that I'm at a place professionally where I'm going to fit in on this roster? That is an important question to ask yourself.
Absolutely. That's great. That's fantastic. I also, I mean, when I was younger, I also liked looking at the rosters who sort of had older singers who sang my repertoire, because I know that a lot of times younger singers can go in as that cover possibility. And so if you have an older singer on the on the roster who's, more famous or whatever and sings the rep, you could get a younger singer in as their
Yep.
cover. And that happens a lot, especially in Europe, where like there's a singer who's like, oh, that's Juan Diego's cover. He goes everywhere and covers Juan Diego, or something like that. You
Right.
hear that all the time. But I think it's great to look at that at the roster, like you said, and just see like how do I fit in, and where would I fit in, and would I sing at these same houses as well? I
Yeah.
think it's fantastic info. Um, Hannah Bullock had a question that I think is also very important because we hear mixed answers about this, and I really would love to know the true answer on this. Hannah wants to know, how important is it to have a major young artist program on your resume when you submit for management?
Um, I How important is it? Somewhat
Mhm.
important. I think there are a lot of paths.
Sure.
We have worked with singers who have built wonderful careers who never did any major young artist programs or weren't invited to audition for
Uh,
young artists major young artist
ah.
programs. um, you know, the one of the real benefits of being in a major young artist program is that typically that means you have the support of the house. And so when you graduate from the program, hopefully the house assists you professionally. It's not a guarantee, but it's a hope. And so for a manager, that can be helpful when you're trying to start someone's professional journey, because the transition into being a professional is one of the hardest stages. But that does not mean that's the only path, and I would never disqualify someone because they didn't have that credit. Most people don't have that credit.
See, guys, I'm right. It's so funny because I feel like I tell the singers who ask me those questions all the time. I didn't have a major young artist program on my resume, and I'm in Zurich singing Simone Boccanegra. Like,
Yep.
I, it because it comes out of my mouth. It's not as important as if it comes out of your mouth. So thank you so much for saying that. But it is. Well, I mean, what if you just didn't get through the pre-screening? What if you sing amazingly well and somehow you just didn't get through the pre-screening process of any particular yap, which we all know is not done necessarily by, the person running the yap. And what if it just happened that you just didn't get through that, initial process? Like nobody watched your videos. You never got through that stage of the yap audition process or the application process, but you're
Yep.
actually a really good singer. I feel like no manager would, especially if you send videos that are spectacular and you have an incredible instrument and it's big and it's rich, and like I feel like no manager would say, "Oh, I can't take her because she didn't have a major young artist program on her resume."
Yep.
I would still want to hear that person, but
Yep.
that's me. So I'm going to tag team off of that question and ask you a question from Jessica Gonzalez Rodriguez, who wants to know, what's the best way for singers outside of those young artist programs to connect with managers?
hmm Well, I mean, I'm personally a proponent of just, building a network, reaching out to people. I realize that it's only my opinion. Some managers you might write to and they don't write back, and that's just part of things. But for me, I'm always happy to hear from someone who just says, "Hey, I just wanted you to know about me," or if I'm at a performance or somewhere and someone comes up and says, "I recognize you and I just wanted to introduce myself," or whatever. I mean, I think that's great, and there's no reason not to make attempts at building your own network. So I think that's one part of it, and then the other part again is utilizing those mentors and those professionals that you're connected to hopefully make introductions for you, or at least be referenced when you're reaching out to people. But that's another good way to meet managers.
Working that network is so important. And it's always such a hard thing. I remember being a young artist, and I remember, standing at, the tent at the close of the Opera Theater St. Louis show and being like, I don't want to talk to anyone because I'm so nervous.
Yep.
But like, it is super important to just walk up to people and be like, "Hi, my name is Jennifer Rowley. It's really nice to meet you. You have a fantastic roster. I, have seen some of your clients on Instagram, da 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 da." Follow up with an email that says, "Hey, I met you at the tent at Opera Theater St. Louis," and then you start a conversation. And in that conversation, you can, build a relationship. I mean, even if it's just a friendship relationship, and that could eventually, in some years when you're ready, lead to something. But at least you have made that connection. So those little networking parts of our job are really, really important, even though they're really difficult.
Well, and,
They're,
and I totally understand people feeling like, I don't, am I allowed to talk to
oh my,
anyone? I totally
all
get that. But for me, it's like, when someone comes up to me and they're like intimidated to talk to me or something, it still catches me by surprise because I'm like, this is my job
no.
to talk to people and to, meet people and nobody, I don't think that people should ever feel shy about doing that, but I completely understand why they do, completely.
You said that the transition from being a young artist into a professional is one of the most difficult parts of someone's career. Transitioning out of being a student into being a young artist is also a difficult transition because as a student, you're looking at everyone around you from this perspective of like, I'm the kid, they're the adult, I listen, I learn, they do the teaching. And when you get out of that educational institution and you're in the real world, these are your colleagues.
Yep,
It's not that like the managers are up here and we're down here. No, we're all here and we're all working together to create art. And you
exactly.
should feel comfortable to walk up to someone, introduce yourself, and have a conversation like a normal human being with anyone that's at a party. But it's so difficult because we don't get the time to sort of transition out of that educational sphere where we're like, okay, we're the students, they're the grown-ups, we need to listen and learn, that kind of a thing. So I think that's where the, disconnect happens, and then we're not sort of taught how to network. And that's really important. Okay, I have another question here. Sarah Rose Taylor wants to know, hello everyone. One question I have is when someone is on a different track, i.e., a late bloomer, how does one go about seeking management without young artist programs to their name?
Mm. Yeah, that is a hard one, and that's going to be kind of an uphill climb. And again, I think it's just about trying to meet people, trying to connect with people, and trying to find, those people that believe in you and get on board with you. Because I mean, that's what you need ultimately is a few people that really believe in it and are willing to advocate and willing to make efforts. Like that can really start something.
Mhm.
But that is hard. That's a hard place to come from. And so I think, just trying to keep up positivity, not get discouraged, and just kind of grind, from that position is important. But, like you were saying before, Jen, if somebody comes forward and they've got the goods, then it's like, anybody who's serious in what we're doing will credibly look at that because that's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. And if you're a late bloomer and you have a bigger voice, especially, I mean, we understand in the business that sometimes larger voices take a little bit longer. I mean, I did my last young artist program at 30, and that young artist program was what made my career and what made know the name Jennifer Rowley. If I wouldn't have waited and done that young artist program at 30, you and I wouldn't even be talking to each other today. I would have quit back
Yep.
then, Okay, so I have another one that asks, what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes, misconceptions that you see in artist expectations when it comes to the manager artist collaboration? Oh, that's a great question,
That is a
actually.
great question. I think I think that sometimes people think that a manager is just kind of going to make everything happen or is going to open all the doors, have all the conversations, and that actually this partnership requires a lot of work from both sides. And this is good because it brings me back to what you were saying before, Jen, about like the people are nervous to talk to managers because of this power dynamic and this kind of teacher student thing. And it's completely true. Like managers, we have the connections, we have the information. Sometimes we have to hold information back from artists for all sorts of different reasons. And so it does create this dynamic, but the artists are the ones who are paying us. So it has to be a
Yeah.
partnership. And when I talk to artists who are dissatisfied with their management, and sometimes they'll say, like, well, why do I have to pay a commission on this thing? Because they had nothing to do with it. So, like, why do I have to pay a commission on that? To me, that's always an indicator that there isn't like a real
Mhm.
partnership going on there, because what we should be doing is both feeding off of our networks, our connections, our information. And sometimes, yeah, like something bust my butt for something and I finally bring it in. It's like, great. And sometimes it's because something came from the artist or a connection.
Yeah.
That's all part of it. We're trying to build that up together. So I think there can be a misconception that the artist, doesn't have a role in kind of the booking element of things, or the professional advancement or some of this stuff, and really that's not the
Yeah.
case at all.
Oh, I,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure everyone who follows me knows me. I'm very type A. Um, I want to have my hand in everything. I want to be involved. Now, oh, like you said, you don't always tell artists everything. I don't want to know.
right,
I don't want to know. I have no interest in what the person A, B, C, Z has to say about my voice. I have no concern. My team has those things to say, and that's all I care about.
right.
If Michael Paul tells me I sang sharp, then probably I sang sharp, so I should fix that. But I don't need to hear from five different people that, they don't like my singing because of this. Love that. But at the same time, I'm definitely going to, the collaboration aspect between the manager and the client is also huge. So, like, if something does come into me, I'm going to be like, you know what, love to do that. Here's, all the information. If it's a recital or if it's a program or something like that, I'm going to send you on now to Alex so that you guys can discuss those, kind of business things about this deal. And I'm going to like step away. And
Yep,
when we come back to the artistic side of things, loop me back in.
exactly.
But I think that give and take is really important. And I think also, even if someone came, even if someone comes directly to you and says, hey, we want to hire you for this thing, that's great. But like you have a business manager, like
Mhm.
you need to send that forward, and you do need to give commission on all of those things and let them, because if you're going to service that contract anyways, regardless of if the person contacted me or contacted you,
Mhm.
your team is going to do, all of the things servicing that contract and book travel and, all of those things. So even if the 10% doesn't seem like it's like upfront obvious, down the line it's always being earned for sure by
Well,
both.
what I always tell
Yeah.
people about commissions is that commissions also cover all the work that
All of
managers
the
do
work.
that doesn't result in anything,
Yeah.
So all of the legwork that doesn't bring in a contract, that's also covered by commissions when we do have contracts. And so, but again, I find that these things really come forward when there's a disconnect in
Yeah.
the partnership. And I think if everything's working the way that it ideally should, people don't have that mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Love that. Hi, Andres Cascante.
Oh,
Andres wants to know, I wanted to ask about the process of changing management for a young artist. How can a singer approach this subject tactfully and respectfully for all parties involved? Great question, Andres.
yes, this is a very good question. And, I think it's a very sensitive process. I've seen it happen a lot of different ways. I think one thing that's really important is a lot of singers, especially if they've signed up with their first manager, they were not used to that before. They didn't know what it was going to be like. they will not communicate with the manager about the things that aren't working for them or that they don't like. Either they feel like they can't or they shouldn't, or they're too intimidated, don't want to. And what that ends up resulting in is that the manager is shocked when they leave because they're like, well, none of this was communicated to me. And so I think it's very important to say that before you consider changing management in a meaningful way, make sure that you've talked to your current manager about any issues that you have or misgivings or things you might like to see done differently and see what that conversation is like. And then assuming that you've voiced these things and you still feel like this just isn't the right fit, there's a few ways to go about it. I think probably the cleanest way is just to confidentially talk to other managers. And once you have come to an arrangement with someone, then you inform your current manager that you'd like to make a change. And hopefully, none of us like it when artists leave. It's a tough part of things, but it is part of things. And if we're invested in artists, then we want what they feel is best for them, even if we might not agree. And so hopefully your current manager handles that in a supportive and professional way and you work through those details. I have also been in situations where a managed singer has told their current management that they are going to engage in talks with other managers. So
Mhm.
that is a thing. It does happen. And sometimes the current manager is supportive of that if they feel like something's not working in the relationship. So that is an option. But I would say the way that most commonly happens is just, kind of quietly make your arrangements and then inform your current manager.
I think the communication aspect prior to that, though, Alex, that you said is really important. Um, you really don't want to catch the manager off guard, right? If you haven't had any discussion that, this or this isn't working for me, or I feel like I need more of this, that, or the other thing, you didn't really give them a chance to turn around what wasn't working, because maybe there is a potential to turn it around, but they don't know
Yeah.
that. I always tell I always tell singers that they're the franchisee of the Burger King, right? They own the Burger King. And inside, you've got the manager, the assistant manager, and all the people who are working for you on that team of the Burger King. And if the manager of the Burger King is not producing, is not selling enough burgers, you can't just go, oh, you're fired because you didn't sell enough burgers. You actually have to have a conversation with that manager and say, hey, what's going on with our Burger King? Are we not having enough late night visitors? Are we not having da 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 da? And then, you try to turn around the productivity of your Burger King,
Yeah.
right? You have to do that with your artist management too. You can't just be like, oh, this isn't working. Bye. No, you have to have
Exactly.
a conversation. Again, you have to be a human being and have a conversation with your manager because they're on your team, right? And
Yep.
I always
Exactly.
find it's so funny because I know people are afraid to have that conversation. Oh, my manager will drop me if I say anything that's bad. Well, yeah, if you act like a jerk, probably.
Right.
But
Or it
be a
says something
normal
about
person.
your manager. If your manager can't hear constructive feedback, then that says something else because every person on our roster wants something different out of a management relationship.
Sure.
They don't all want the same communication. Everybody has different, everyone's their own person. So, a manager should be used to hearing from people about kind of working styles and different
Yeah.
needs, and how that's handled is also very telling.
And the more communicative you are, I feel like the more respect is gained. The
Hmm.
more in charge, and the more hands-on you are with your own career. Also, there's a respect with that with all of the members of your team. So don't be afraid to have those conversations, guys. It's important. I will take one or two more. Sarah Kennedy wants to know, not sure if this has been asked yet. Paying for consultations, is this normal? Are consults in general something that managers like to do before deciding on signing someone? That's a great question because I've definitely seen those consults, and your consult fee is this much. And yeah, I've definitely seen that. So what do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah, Fletcher Artists, we don't charge for consultation, but that also affects, how much we do consultations. So we will not just consult with anybody. Typically, there is some kind of motivator for that, like either we have a shared party or, there's some sort of reason that we feel like we want to consult with someone, but we do not charge for it. So if we were to do it, then, typically we would split the expenses with the singer, like they would pay for the pianist, we'll pay for the space or something like that. And then that's also what we do for auditions because it's like a professional opportunity for both sides, right? Like, so there should be expenses for both sides. A singer shouldn't have to pay all the expenses to audition for a manager because the manager is also receiving a professional opportunity out of hearing the singer. Um, but there are people who charge for consultations, and that is their choice. I don't think a consultation should be in any way attached to the possibility of being signed to a roster. And I have definitely seen people who offer consultations saying in a consultation you are not singing for the roster, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
I think that probably is the way to do it. I don't have an opinion on whether paid consultations, should be a thing or not. But just at Fletcher Artists, my colleague Sarah Fraser, our vice president, and myself have always felt like that's something we should do industry wide when we can, to the extent we can, but we're not going to charge for it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have to say that I've definitely sung paid consultations, but those consultations, I am not expecting that I am singing for that roster. I am singing for that person to get their expertise and to get their ears on what my product is and what I have to give, and to get their opinion on a certain thing,
Mhm.
whether it be, am I ready to go into this repertoire? Do you like this repertoire? Do they have repertoire suggestions? And a lot of the managers, and there are some fantastic ones out there who do charge for consultations, their ear is fantastic, and actually you could probably get out of them like the biggest list of repertoire that you ever heard in your life.
Yep.
I'm thinking about like I had a consultation with Matt Epstein, and like the amount of repertoire that just like spewed out of his voice and like or out of his mouth, and like you should listen to the 1905 recording of da 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 da, and I was like, what's happening right
Yep.
now? Like, but like I'm paying for that information. And so I'm not thinking about like, oh, will Matt Epstein manage me? No, I'm thinking I want to hear what he has to say about what he's hearing, in
Absolutely.
just like having a coaching,
Yeah.
just like going to a coach and getting their opinion.
And I think
So I
some managers are really steeped in opera tradition and recordings and repertoire and voices. And if they have that knowledge base and they want to share it in a professional setting, then they totally should. And again, that's where it probably factors in for me. It's like I'm not steeped in that knowledge base and I know that about myself, so I'm going to factor that in.
totally. Absolutely. I've got a couple more here. How much collaboration happens on conversations regarding repertoire and role development with the artist? Being mindful of long-term vision in terms of longevity. Hi, Sarah. That's actually a big thing that I've always talked about, only because I have always known that I would take a trajectory from a certain point, and as the voice has gotten bigger, it's a few roles get added this year, a few roles get added this year, a few more potential roles get added this year. Or I've definitely had a manager say, hey, how far in the future do you think you'd want to sing Lady Macbeth? Or how far in the future would you want to sing Norma?
Mhm.
Or Sieglinde, or whatever the case may have been at that time. And you have the conversation about that and say, okay, well, I'm not ready this season to sing Lady Macbeth, but maybe in 2 years that will be great. What about you, Alex? How do you feel that collaboration is with the artists on your roster?
Yeah, I think it's super important to be in discussion about all that stuff. And again, that's where I really want the coach and the teacher and anybody that's musically involved in the artist's development also being weighing in on that and all of us building consensus around that. But I think it's a super important part of artist management. And, we've all seen people that flew very close to the sun very quickly and vocally crashed, and you don't really want to see that for anybody. We're all trying to build longevity, so and to do things responsibly. And also, I think pacing of the seasons is very important, and kind of what role comes after what other role. How much time is there? How much time does the artist feel like they need?
That
These are all things that have to be kept in
how
mind.
how much time do you need to learn what you actually have coming up? That's so hard. And it is so, I know you guys, I mean, I have told so many people, you're going to have to say no to that because you just don't have time to learn it. It's so hard to say no.
Hmm.
It's so hard to say no. But like, if you're looking at your calendar and you don't have a month free to learn Mimi, when you're going to need a month to learn her for sure, you can't take that, and so you do have to have these conversations with your team, your manager, and you have to be honest with them. I can't possibly learn a huge Verdi role in 1 month. It's impossible. I can learn Puccini though, but I can't learn Verdi. And that's something that I'm, very open about when it comes to like things come in and could you go do this and da, da, da. Those things you have to feel obviously that trust with your team again to be able to say those things. But yeah, I've always found that collaboration is best when it comes to the manager, and you don't want obviously you want to have conversations about those things because you don't want the manager just being like, oh yeah, she'll do that, and then you're like, uh I can't do
Exactly.
that, or,
Yeah.
or you think something with fear, or you cram it and it's not prepared right, or
Right.
whatever the case may be. But all of those combos are so important. Um, Thank you, Alex. I have to go to rehearsal in 9 minutes, so I'm gonna cut this chat up. But this was so incredibly helpful. There's so many great comments here in the chat about how helpful this was, and thanking you for being with us. Um, Great conversation, all of that. So, read through that because they all love you. But I'm thrilled to have you here, and I'm thrilled to have you on my management team. And I can't wait to work more with Fletcher Artist Management. And I hope that this has been very helpful for all of you. And again, if you still have more questions, please leave them in the comments. I will put this video up later on today after I finish with rehearsal. I will put it up. You can leave questions in the comments. You can send me a DM and I can pass it on to Alex and see if I can get you an answer. But please don't think that this is the end of the conversation. Obviously, this is the beginning of the conversation, and I hope that we have made the management process a little bit more clear for all of you and a little bit more transparent. So that when you are thinking about it, it isn't something that's big and scary and crazy, and that you can sort of approach it with a sense of calm and organization. And I hope that this was very helpful. Thank you, Alex. Have a
Pleasure.
wonderful day. Everyone have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon on another live. Bye, guys. Bye.